Hey guys, Enigmatic Mr. L here with a video about Fire Emblem Fates. Now, Fates is a game, it hasn't been the most recent Fire Emblem entry for years, nor is it like an older game like Genealogy of the Holy War or Binding Blade that's likely to get a remake. Still, I think it would be fun just to take a look back and talk about ways that I personally would improve the game. Now, I do want to state right off the bat that I do know it's easier to take a look at something that already exists and is finished, talk about ways it can be improved rather than just completely invent something new from scratch. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it, just a little bit of harmless fun. So, with that out of the way, let's just get off with what I would do to change it. Starting with completely cutting the revelation route. Now, personally, I don't dislike Revelation as much as many people do. I think the map design, while somewhat subpar overall, I don't really hate it. I don't think it's as bad as something like Fire Emblem Gaiden. But I do think just having a more or less golden route where like the two kingdoms come together to fight against the true threat of the war, it kind of takes away what made Fate special, like the appeal. You had to like choose a side. You couldn't save both kingdoms. And yeah, in Revelation, there's like two characters that end up dying here, but for the most part, it's considered like the golden standard, just in terms of everyone getting like almost everyone getting a happy ending. So, in my revision, Revelation isn't going to exist. We're just going to focus exclusively on birthright and conquest, and as a result, some changes will be made, like there wouldn't be any like Anankos or Vala or things like that. Next, I just have to add some level of world building. It doesn't have to be much, but just something like a map that has like Hoshido and Nord labeled clearly with like the other kingdoms that get brought up. Suppose when you go on like skirmishes in this game, they just kind of appear randomly. Just everything's just kind of a mess. You don't know where anything is. And just like give the continent a name. Basically, just the fandom has dubbed this kingdom as like Fate's Landia. Just something for the continent as a whole that includes both Hoshido and Nord plus the other minor kingdoms. If they wanted to, they could do what Three Houses did and have like a library setting and my castle that goes a lot more to lore. But even if they don't go that far, just a small minimum amount, like a map and the name of the setting, I think that would go a long way. All right, next I have replacing the child paralogs. So basically, child units, they worked in Genealogy of Holy War. They worked in Awakening because they're intricately tied to the story as a whole. But I feel like Fates, they just like, hey, child units, they worked in Awakening. Let's just tack them onto Fates without considering that they don't really fit in narratively here. So there wouldn't be any like child units here. Instead, some of the paralogs you get, the ones you get for both Hoshido and Nor, will include the Mozu paralog, that one's staying. And then some other ones you get are like one that has stat boosters, like your Spirit Dust, your Draco Shield, etc. One that you play the map and you get some special weapons, like a 3-range bow or like an inverse axe or shuriken or something like that. One map to grind for gold, one map to grind for EXP. Something to give you like a taste for that pay DLC map. So if you try it out and say, wow, I wish I could do this more often and get a lot of gold experience at once, this gives you a taste of it, and then you could try out the DLC if you wanted to. And one probably that unlocks for very late is an S rank Dragonstone. Basically, I would just kind of rework how S rank weapons work in Fates. It's just so few units can use them because only like footlock units that can only use one weapon type can use them. And then even if you do get someone up to S rank, just the drawbacks for it, just generally not worth using. I would have it so every class, it doesn't have like a cap on its weapon rank. You can still reach S rank with units that have dual weapon types. Maybe just something like unit types that only have one weapon rank. They're internally they get weapon EXP faster, and the downsides they wouldn't be nearly as drastic. They would just be locked behind grinding the character up to that high S rank. So then for Nor paralogs, one of them would be like Hoshido class skill. You only have one, but you can use it to transform any of your units into any Hoshido class. Just give you a taste of what the other route's like. plus just S rank weapons: the sword, lance, axe, bow, dagger, tome, and the Bifrost. And again, these weapons, their main drawback would just be their getting up to that S rank. But if you do have a unit with an S rank in the required weapon, it doesn't have like nice effective speed, -2 strength and skill after use, like that sort of thing. And then for Hoshido, something similar, like a Nor class seal, transforms in units into any Nor class, give you a taste of the other route. And then S rank, their equivalent weapons, the katana, naginata, mace, yumi, shuriken, spirit, and an S rank rod. My idea would basically be that the Hoshido S rank weapons, they'd have like marginally less stats, like a little less might or hit or something, but they have some sort of special benefit, like +2 effective speed when using, or +2 defense or res, or maybe the S rank shuriken it grants even more stat penalties when it's used against opponents. And the S rank rod, I'm thinking something like has 3 uses, and use it in a map. It buffs everyone's stats besides HP by 2 for the entire map, but it only has 3 uses. So with the paralogs replaced with like weapons and items and that sort of thing, the quote unquote child units, they would just show up throughout like the main campaign, like the main chapters. Basically, Birthright and Conquest, you don't get many units in the main chapters, like outside of paralogs, about like midway through the game. So these units, they show up like in place of that. So you get a unit in like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So you're still getting new units, even if you don't do paralogs. And this will make the game more Iron Man friendly, I think. And naturally, they wouldn't have, the units in that are already in your army, they wouldn't be like their children. So you could either have something like Soleil shows up and she's just has her usual like bubbly personality, kind of heavily implied to be attracted to women, but that she doesn't have a connection to Laszlo, or you can just replace it with a new character altogether, since you don't have to tie them to the pre-existing characters. So with so many characters joining, and it's no longer locked between like first gen and second gen, I would cut down on the number of support conversations. I'm thinking something like every unit, besides the Avatar, still has like 5 romantic options and 2 like platonic options. So you still have options for your heart seals and your partner seals. It's not a big emphasis placed on it for matchmaking for pairing down the units. You still would maybe like want to pair up units, if not for just seeing them paired up, just like the supports, the better support bonuses they get when like pairing up or adjacent to each other, plus the heart seal thing. Probably the Avatar would be able to support everyone, but that'd be about it. Speaking of Avatar supports, there would be no incest in this version. So in my version, Korin is actually born into Hoshido and taken into Nor, and the reverse is true for Azura. She's born in Nor but taken into Birthright. There's no Vala. So the Hoshido siblings are Korin's blood siblings in this, and likewise the Nor siblings are Azura's blood siblings in this one. And as a result, you wouldn't be able to support either one. Not even like Korin couldn't even support or you can still support, but you wouldn't be able to S rank any of them. Like Korin can even S rank the Nor siblings, because they're not related by blood, but he was raised to believe that. So it's just kind of weird. And it would be weird just having like your main avatar, depending on the route, you can S rank support every like opposite gender unit except for 2, but I still think that's less weird than just the incest, or like technically not incest, of Conquest. So moving away a bit from the characters into the story, I would humanize Garen a bit and give Makoto like a slight dark side. Basically for this, I'm thinking Garen would be kind of similar to Trevant from Genealogy of the Holy War, and Makoto would be somewhat similar to Rhea from Three Houses. I imagine maybe it's something like prior to the game, Garen approached Hoshido with like an offer. He'd offer like military protection in exchange for some of their resources, since Nord is severely lacking that department. Makoto turned him down, and enraged, that's what kind of leads Garen to begin his conquest of Hoshido. And Makoto, she's just kind of not thinking about the larger picture here. She's like, we don't really need military protections, but she's not thinking about how desperately Nord needs it. So basically, Garen would be like 90, 95% bad, with a touch of humanity, and Makoto would be inverse. She'd be mostly good, but just like a little touch dark side. And if you play Birthright, it basically just seals the deal on both of them. Garen, he ends up becoming a monster, very, not quite the same, but similar to how he is at the end of Birthright, just like a monster. And Makoto ends up like apologizing, like repenting of her actions, realizing it was wrong, should have thought about the big picture. They're both just thinking of their own kingdoms in different ways. And conversely, if you take the conquest route, Garen slowly over the course of it gets more and more humanized and realizes that conquest isn't the best option. And Makoto just gets more and more raged about like losing her child and like has aggression towards Nord, ends up being like the final boss, that sort of thing. So also in terms of like Garen and Makoto, they'd serve as the Goto archetype. Basically, Garen would join your army in like the final chapter of Conquest, and Makoto would join your army in the final chapter against Garen and Birthright. And likewise, Makoto would serve as the final boss in Conquest. I'd imagine they'd join in the final map, and if you like save and exit, then the unit doesn't technically join. They're not my castle, so they wouldn't really have any supports. You could have them like join like a chapter before and have like some platonic supports or something, with like the avatar and their like children, but I think just having them join the final map, not having supports, like a powerful unit, in case you're playing like an Iron Man again, and you've lost units, this allows you to just still have a way to defeat the game despite your army not being optimal or you've lost many units. So next, you might be thinking like, well, it seems to imply that Makoto's going to stay alive in this. She's not going to be the character that dies early on to kind of spur the main character into action. So who would end up taking that role, depending on your route, would either be Gunter or Yukimura. Basically, I've always thought it'd be interesting if like the pre-promoted Jagan character you get, the way they actually fall off is literally like falling in battle to like do a cutscene or something. So I thought this would be a good time to try that out. So in Conquest, Gunter joins fairly early on. He's got, in this version, he'd have very solid bases and very solid growths. But about midway through the game, and like in a cutscene, Yukimura kills him and serves as the boss for that chapter. And the inverse is true in Birthright. Yukimura joins very early on in pre-promoted class, solid bases, solid growths. But midway through the game, Gunter kills him in a cutscene and serves as like the boss for that chapter. I don't think it would be too difficult to avoid having like spoiler interface. So you could, because they don't have children in this version. They have like a few supports, but yeah, so do like all the characters. Their supports would just be locked to like some of the earlier characters who join. And you know, if they S support someone and then they die later in like a cutscene, it's not really going to affect anything in terms of like gameplay in this version. Next, I have people, speaking of dying, people die when they are killed. So basically, because of the way child units worked, you always had to have like the father character stay alive, even if they like fall in combat. So like, you know, Laszlo, Saizo, etc. could show up for the child paralogue character, the child character paralogs. And, you know, I think kind of the downside of that is, well, if these characters are still technically alive, why don't they show up in more like cutscenes? Like, it's kind of a balance. You know, people wonder like their favorite characters, they want to be plot relevant, but many characters can't be plot relevant because they could, you know, die like in classic mode. But if they're going to stay alive anyway, why not have them show up? So in this version, since there are no like child paralogs, like even the female characters, like thinking like Leo's support with its son Forrest says something about your mother said you would be here. It's like no one actually dies, even if like characters quotes like imply that they die. Pretty much everyone at the end of the game in the credits just has like retired. So basically, in this version, the royal siblings, the retainers like Jacob and Felicia and like Azura, they get the special. Oh, I've been defeated, but I can't fall here. Everyone else like gets a death quote. They don't show up like at all for the rest of the game, and like the end credits say that they died, like they died in chapter 11 or 12 or whatever. And speaking of dying, in this version, there would be no mercy for the opposing side. Like, in vanilla Birthright and Conquest, you end up making peace with all of your siblings, even the ones you fought against, and only two of them die. In this version, there is no peace for that. You end up, if you play Birthright, you'll fight one by one all of your Conquest siblings, and when you defeat them, they actually die in combat. And same thing for Conquest. You end up fighting Sakura, Ryoma, Takumi, and Hinoka. They end up dying. They don't make peace with you. And I imagine the same thing for the kingdom at large. Maybe if you play the Conquest version, Hoshido actually gets outright conquered, or maybe that just might be need to rework some, have it less dark, or it might just be whatever kingdom you end up fighting against. It's so crippled at the end of the war and losing so much, it doesn't have much left of anything. So only the kingdom you side with really is going to behave like a dominant force at the end. All the others, the kingdom collapses entirely, and all of your royal siblings, you have to end up fighting and killing them in combat. Make it a bit more heart-wrenching and impactful. And that's all I want to say about Fire Emblem Fates. Thank you so much for watching. This is Enigmatic Mr. L, signing out.